I wasn't able to attend this morning. I've got snippets of what was said, and it sounds completely fascinating. So I hope that there isn't any sort of duplication or overlap. My position perspective will be a little bit different. I've got this as a seasoned speaker. This is honestly my first in-person. I'm so used to presenting in front of a laptop. Okay, so these are the three things I want to review with you today. Can everybody see or am I in the way by using the podium? See, being short helps. Okay, so plant-based past to present, sort of a timeline of what that's meant. Going to the past and moving to the present often gives you insights about what the industry kind of means and where it's going. Meat of all kinds, the make-believe story of sustainability, and it's the connection between a meat company now producing plant-based items. And the future of plant-based products, a dietitian's opinion, and that's where we'll move it. The comments made through this presentation are my professional opinions based on industry knowledge, research, experience. They're not necessarily representative of any position of make-believe food. So there's the waiver, the disclaimer. So it's just my opinion. The interesting thing about that, being a dietitian, is that people always talk to you about food. Doesn't matter, I've been a dietitian for a long time, so has Roberta in the room. You say, oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a registered dietitian. Oh, well, you'll get the person who's like, proud. Well, I lost 20 pounds as a keto diet. Like I'm handing out gold stars. Like I'm okay. So you get that kind of person telling you about food. You get the one that had the inquiring person who has some questions. So, do they use real blueberries in Tim Hortons muffins? Sure, okay, yeah, they're real. There's all kinds of facets and different levels of food. When you're a registered dietitian, it kind of covers the gamut, and people just talk to you about food. And that's kind of the basis and the angle that I'm taking and what I would like to share with you today. Is a lot of that sort of just general consumer people talking about food. I'm also a sales manager with Make-Believe. So when you sell food, you get continual feedback about your product, about your position, about everything. So that part of the sales element of the last several years that I've been in the food service industry is really just that feedback coming from customers who are also consumers as well. So that's sort of the background and the backfill of the kind of angle that I'm taking in what I want to talk with you about today. So, plant-based in the past. Plant-based used to mean foods, legumes, split peas, beans, tofu. Here, I'll try to make this so I'm not cutting in and out. I'm Italian, so the hands go wild and the mouth's got to follow and it's crazy. Anyway, so what this meant was vegetarian. Like 20 years ago, nobody heard about plant-based, it was just vegetarian. And vegetarian was largely motivated by religious practices. So the plant-based individual of 20, 25 years ago was truly motivated by something that is not current today. Vegan was not a word, really. It was not a buzzword. Not really a lot of people knew unless you were a healthcare professional. You didn't really know what that meant. You knew as a vegetarian, those people don't eat meat, but you didn't really know much more past that. Well, today it is definitely a lot different, right? So, a little bit about today. What does it mean today? Yes, it means things like legumes, split peas, veggie burgers. Sorry, veggie products. And what I mean by veggie products is something that's not trying to be meat. It's just some black beans and corn shoved into a patty or rolled up. That's like a veggie product. It's not a meat analog. There's a very clear distinction. And if, as I'm speaking along the way, that's worried to you, please just put up your hand and I'll try to answer that question as we go. So today, there's all kinds of lingo, buzzwords. It's very different than the simple vegetarian of the past. So they're now a lot more complex. So there's terms like lacto-ovo-vegetarian, ovo-vegetarian, pescatarian, which those of you have some food language, pes means fish, so you kind of get that one. Flexitarian too. Flexitarian basically is someone who just is choosing to not eat meat on whatever schedule they wish. It's very, very flexible, hence the term flexitarian. So now just a little survey. Stand up if you're a vegan. Okay, that kind of goes with the numbers. There's very few percentage of actual true vegan. How many of you are vegetarian and that you don't eat meat, but you will eat fish or you will eat dairy? Anybody? Strict. Okay, again, numbers, good. This is following the real numbers, so we're all in line. How many of you are flexitarian, where you're choosing not to eat meat on occasion? Right, okay, awesome. So that is more of the bulk of the people. And by the way, I didn't ask to stand up, but I'll take you raising your hand as an indicator that you're following along. Anyway, okay, so you can see how the vegetarian of the past is not the vegetarian of today, and definitely the product line or options in food is dramatically different. I thought this was really funny. So, vegetables, if vegetables are so good, explain to me why vegans are always trying to make them taste like that. That's really just a little joke about sort of the way the industry has gone. So, before I get into meat analogs and things like that, what happened to just eating beans and legumes? Like, why did this industry shift so much? Why do we need to get into veggies and into meat analogs? What's wrong with just eating beans and legumes? Well, non-meat diets of the past, which is dietitians, we often counsel people on making sure they're getting all the nutrients that they need with the elimination of meat and dairy, right? It's complex, it's not simple. It takes time and it takes knowledge. So imagine if you are a person who's going to adopt that lifestyle. You're not going to eat a can of chickpeas every day. You're going to want to do something to improve the variety. That takes time. If you're using dried versions of those foods, that takes even more time and some knowledge too, right? It's time and knowledge. Plant-based meat analogs are fortified with products to make them a complete protein. So it's very simple. There is no time needed. And it's really easy. You heat them up and there you've got your full complement of nutrition. So that's sort of one of the reasons why the change in the, I'll talk about the explosion, has happened. At the fundamental level, people don't have the time or the knowledge to go vegetarian. So these meat analog products have risen in the marketplace. Well, that's one reason. Okay, so to explain this a little bit further, this is sort of the nutritional content, and I often get asked this question about, okay, so nutritionally, are they the same? Yes. So if you look at an actual portion of meat, it's 75 grams, about the size of your palm, just for some perspective. That's your average sort of meat portion. Okay, you're supposed to be average meat portion. Most Canadians eat more. So that gives you about 21 to 26 grams of protein. If you look at a cup of chickpeas, that's about 15 to 17 grams of protein. And our field roast Italian crumble, which is one of the meat analog products that Maple Leaf makes, a mere 60 grams gives you almost that. Okay? So the question is, would you rather eat 1 cup of beans, which is a lot of beans, or would you rather just have a small plant-based meat analog burger? Okay, so that's fundamentally another reason why there's been a shift in the marketplace for people who are moving in that direction. So let's have a look, sort of a little bit more detail about this industry explosion. I like to call it the industry explosion because it's dramatic, but it is a very true work to fit what's happened in the last few years. So some of the factors, Canada's Food Guide, which is the staple of nutrition information for Canadians who are well, they issued a brand new version which really emphasized plant-based products. Okay, so that already got Canadians thinking about incorporating plant-based products into their diet. And health professionals, of course, that use Canada's Food Guide, that changed the messaging as well to be in line with Canada's Food Guide, where plants were part of the protein. The perceived health benefit, and I put the perceived health benefit there because I am a registered dietitian. I know what the health benefit is versus the others, but the average consumer thinks that because it's plant, it's therefore healthy. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, depending on who you are, your current health status, and a whole bunch of other factors. Okay, so I use the word perceived health benefit there. Not to say that there isn't, but it depends on a lot on the product. Climate change. That was referenced in Brett's presentation. Thanks for bringing that up, Brett, and introducing that. Climate change, environmental issues, all of those things, and I'll touch upon that when I talk about maple leaf sustainability, is a very big factor in part of the explosion of the demand for plant-based products. But what really made the explosion happen is food processing technology. That's the catalyst for all of this. Because if there wasn't the technology to make these plant-based products, they wouldn't be available in the marketplace. You'd be back to beans and lentils and pulses. Okay? So the food processing piece is super important when you look back at what plant-based is. Okay, so our market today, environmental concerns spark consumer thoughts about what they're choosing to eat. The Canadian curiosity about the industry shifts as governments address climate change and environmental factors. It's now become a government issue and a social issue. For the first time, sustainability becomes a factor in what consumers are choosing to eat. So that's a big shift from even 10 years ago, where climate change and those kinds of issues, they're sort of on the horizon, but now they're right in front of you. Okay, so plant-based meats made by a meat company. I'm sure you're all scratching your heads going, what is Maple Leaf doing making plant-based products? And to be honest, when we launched plant-based products, I was kind of in the same boat, going, why are we doing this? What does this mean? So it's an addition to our portfolio. And sustainability is really the key reason why. So to get into that a little bit more, before I get into Maple Leaf sustainability, any questions about plant-based, vegan, definitions, terms, the industry shift and change? We're on with it. Awesome. Okay, so this is an infographic that I really like because it pictorially shows, I like pictures, pictorially shows what this means. So to lower your diet's environmental impact, the only real way to do that is to eat plant-based foods. If you look at greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with the average American diet, animal-based foods account for 83%, whereas plant-based foods account for 17%. So if you see the little red steaky things, that's the bulk of Maple Leaf's business, is in that 83%. We also do poultry, we don't do dairy, but we do poultry. So if you look at the top red part of that gap, that's where Maple Leaf sits. If we don't change our strategy and move towards at least part of our company that can offset some of the heavy emissions associated with plant-based foods. So there are 4 different platforms to Maple Leaf sustainability platform, and I could probably take my entire 20 minutes talking about it, but I wanted to just literally touch on the Better Planet piece. So the Better Planet piece entails reduction in food waste, land diversion rates, 21% water, 22% reduction in electricity, and regenerative agriculture practices on farmland. So that means some of our new projects on the horizon are things like taking methane gas and turning it into biofuel. So that's something that Maple Leaf is looking at investing into. So not only are we producing a food line that is sustainable and renewable, we're also looking at other things that have nothing to do with food to contribute to the planet's health. The little web click on the bottom is our website. It's really simple. Search Maple Leaf sustainability. There are pages of information with actual explanations of things like zero-based science targets, greenhouse gas emissions, and all of these buzzwords. We're really good at explaining things. So if you are interested, just search that. There's all kinds of info there. We are also the world's first major carbon neutral food company, which That happened in 2017 already, and we're awfully proud of that amazing accomplishment. Michael McCain has a video on YouTube which explains it perfectly in like a minute, because Michael's really good at doing that, and he has a lot of marketing people that help him, I think. But anyway, it's really worth the watch because he explains, oops, that wasn't me, was it?
No.
Okay, perfect, all right. So it's worth a watch. Just search Maple Leaf Carbon Neutral on YouTube and Michael will come up and explain it. But there are two ways that we did that. Number one, we doubled down on our commitment to reduce emissions of all kinds. So the level that we were at, he raised the stakes in doubling down on that. The other thing we did, which is really cool, is we invested in high-quality environmental impact projects. And they're all over North America. They're all kinds of different scopes. I mentioned the biofuel project, but the one that's near and dear to me, I'm sure you've seen these driving down 75 or down number 1. These wind farms, Maple Leaf was part of the project to bring these wind farms to Manitoba, and that's how we offset some of our carbon emissions. We purchase these carbon credits that are part of the wind farm right here in Manitoba, and that is part of our sustainability platform. So when you're driving by and you see those huge honking things, you don't know what they are, that's what they are. They generate wind as part of an eco program project. Okay, so how does a meat company sell plant-based meats? Which is another sort of scratch your head what's happening here, because that is also something that seems to be a bit of an oxymoron. The answer is marketing. So everybody in this room is pretty familiar with marketing, so you'll be able to understand why we did this. Our two plant-based brands, Light Life and Field Roast, are subsidiaries of the Greenleaf Company, and the Greenleaf Company is a subsidiary of Maple Leaf. So we basically took our plant-based product line and tucked it under a whole marketing umbrella. In the US, there's no value of saying, hey, Maple Leaf is making those products, because our name is growing in the US, but it's nowhere near enticing for any of the big players in the US. In Canada, we felt that it was important to keep a distinction between the consumer opinion or the consumer thought of Maple Leaf as a meat company separate from our plant-based products. So that's how a meat company basically sells plant-based meats. And we've done a pretty good job. I'm sure Beyond Meat's products come up several times today in your learning. They're a direct competitor, so I kind of liken Beyond Meats to Tupperware. You know, that's kind of the name now, it's Beyond. Unfortunately, we get confused with Beyond all the time. I'll go into a customer site, oh yeah, you got a Beyond burger for me? It's like, no, I have a Light Life burger for you, I do not have a Beyond Meats burger. It's become a very competitive space with a brand that leads. So you can imagine how challenging that is to sell a product with a brand that leads. So, but we've really made some strides in getting our brand recognized. And at the very bottom of the slide, KFC, you go into KFC and buy the chicken plant-based, that's made by me. If you go under the Light Life brand. If you go into Pizza and have one, same thing. If you have the plant-based pepperoni at Pizza, that is a Maple Leaf product made in Canada. So we're really trying to distinguish ourselves from Beyond by critical things like a lot of products are made in Canada, and that's very different for this field. We have cleaner ingredients, and we're trying to market ourselves and position ourselves under and beyond, trying to catch Beyond, not by pointing them out, which was a very interesting question in the last session, not by pointing out saying, hey, you know what, Beyond Meats has 32 ingredients. Can you pronounce them all? You can pronounce all Light Life ingredients. We don't do that. We just talk on the attributes of it's Canadian, it's food ingredients, and it tastes good, and all those other things. But we have made strides. Your Boston Pizza burger, plant-based burger, that's a Canadian-made Light Life burger. So we have really penetrated the market in food service, which is the division I work in. Sorry, I should have clarified that at the beginning. I don't work in retail, I work in food service. So these, this market penetration under these brands are the ways that we sell our plant-based products, but we're vegan. Any questions about that? It's kind of self-explanatory, really. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about plant-based products in the future. There was a lot of explosive growth that I referred to before. There's a lot of options in the marketplace, and it's getting to be a tight market because there are so many options past the initial launch of Beyond Meats. There's also so many different products, right? It's not just a burger anymore. There's cheese, there's sausage, there's chicken. All day parts are covered within the plant-based realm now. It's not just a hamburger anymore. There's everything. We sell pretty much anything. We have a breakfast sausage patty, pretty much everything in the plant-based version. So it is kind of covering everywhere. It's not just one little meal that you're trying to sell. You can sell every meal, and there's a lot of options, right? So we're going to do a little exercise. I can see that standing up didn't work last time, so raising your hand is okay. We'll go with that. All right. So in the last 2 years, who has either bought at the grocery store or ordered at a restaurant any plant-based meat analog? Not that, black beans. It's an actual analog that's meant to mimic meat. How many of you have bought one? Okay. How many of you have bought one after that, after the first initial try? Did you buy it again? So we're talking second time order / okay, good. And how many of you have eaten one in the last month? Anyone, it doesn't matter, grocery store, the restaurant, blah, 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 blah. Okay, those of you who did not repurchase or retry it, why?
I eat quite a bit of plant-based, but for me personally, I prefer meat-based, lentil-based. I prefer the taste.
Prefer the taste, okay, Matt?
When I first tried it at the initial onset of this coming out, the version I tried was not good, and I've been tempted to try it.
That pretty much, yes. Yes. So that pretty much covers why you prefer beans and legumes, probably because of a texture or a taste or something that if you double click, it would follow in line with what everybody else has said. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why. Oh, sorry. Has the explosion curve flattened? And basically that's what the industry is starting to see. A little bit of the explosion flattening. And for all of those reasons, to be quite honest, I sell this stuff. Like, I'm trying really hard to like it. Like, I am really trying hard to like it. However, for me, it's about the texture. I just can't deal with that texture. That's gummy, that doesn't have the crisp or the snap or the bite or that's my personal take on it. Now, I do agree with you on the ingredient list. That's just not something my personal choice wants to lend itself to. I'm not a big additive preservative gal, which, to be quite honest, is contraindicating one of Maple Leaf's platforms of making real food, because we have torn the hell out of ingredients and made them all very natural on many of our consumer brands. Yet on the plant-based side, you have no choice. You have to use additives. You have to. There's just no choice on that. So I have been asked several times, hey, is this a niche market? Is this something you see going into the future? That's a very difficult question to answer. My personal opinion, having been involved in nutrition and what people eat and selling this stuff, so I have very deep knowledge. I wouldn't say it's a niche market. I would say it's an evolving market. And the thing that will move it from to this is awesome is technology, food processing technology. That's where you'll see the change, because it has to taste good. I've been selling food for a long time and listening to people talk about food for a long time, and it has to taste good. And diet compliance, if you have to follow a cardiac diet because you have heart problems, probably that's going to be a tough diet for a lot of people to do, because cutting back on meat, cutting back on salt, cutting back on all these things is hard. Plus, it doesn't necessarily taste good. So for plant-based products to evolve into mainstream because of environmental concerns, because of that millennial group, and it's true, the millennial group, that's our current biggest customer base right now, is the millennial group, that are still sort of trying hard to adhere to social change and climate change in the environment by trying to do their best to stick to it, right? And that's the biggest target group of our plant-based products. However, to get that to move forward, the taste needs to change. And that's my opinion in terms of, is this niche? Not niche, I think it's an evolving market. I wouldn't call it niche. I would call it something that needs to continue to evolve to the point where it tastes good. And that's really the conundrum. It is also cost prohibitive. So Brent noted that food cost is something Canadians are very concerned about. We've all felt the hit at the grocery store. Right now, plant-based products are also cost prohibitive. They are usually twice to 3 times the amount of its meat partner. So if you cruise into the grocery store and go, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy that Light Life and not Beyond burger in the grocery store today, you'll see that a comparable burger patty pre-made is probably half to a third of the price. So it is cost prohibitive. And again, this is something technology will address, because with technology, you see improvements in food processing, improvements in taste and texture, and that will all evolve. Change, while it's constant, can still be difficult, especially when it comes to food. So that food technology piece is very critical in seeing plant-based explode again. So the good news on that, here's something happening right here at University of Manitoba. So there is a Perfecting Plant-Based Meat Analogs research group about plant-based proteins. They're using ultrasound technology to extract protein. So it's very high tech, very high level, and it's happening in our backyard, which is something that is feel good about. So that kind of brings to a close sort of what I kind of wanted to run through. Is there any questions? I will not be part of the panel. If you, my apologies for that. It's a family situation that I need to depart before we can get into the panel, but I'm happy to take a minute or two if there is time to answer any questions you have.
Good question. So you've been in the business for a while, fair to say?
Yeah. If you're gonna ask me a number, it's gonna be like you're raising of the hand instead of getting it. I can't guarantee that.
Did you ever think at the start of your career that you would be in presentations, pitches, working with your customers and talking about environment sustainability?
Absolutely not. And the answer would have remained the same as little as I've been with Maple Leaf. It'll be 7 years in February. So I started in 2016, and when I started in 2016, absolutely not. I would never have been able to predict this presentation or the customer interest, because the technology really wasn't there yet, right?
So for a bunch of marketers and communicators somewhere within the value chain, what would be one piece of advice as it relates to communicating the benefits, either animal protein or plant-based protein?
My experience with communicating to customers, and quite honestly, my success at Maple Leaf is founded on trust and giving clear communicative messages that are based on truths and realities. I don't walk into a customer site and say, hey, I got this amazing plant-based product for you.
The texture is wonderful.
The texture is amazing, not just wonderful. I go in saying, are you looking for a plant-based product? What kind of customers asking about plant-based products? What day part do you want to put it on? Are you holding it for a long time? Because plant-based products don't always hold the same way. They can get gummy, it's depending on if it's a wheat gluten that's holding it together, and all kinds of other factors. But I personally take an approach of honesty and clarity too, and that in this disruptive environment, clarity is king. Absolutely, being exceptionally clear about what your message is, what your customer wants, but it's that shared value that Brent referred to. Again, sorry to talk, but that shared value, and Maple Leaf is huge on shared value, and that's one of our founding principles of how we operate is that shared value proposition. So if you can provide a clear message and find that shared value, that's where you'll see success, regardless of what sector of the food industry you're in. Does that answer your question? Okay. Sometimes they start talking in circles.
So thank you for the presentation. That was great, very insightful. So my question is on the branding. So for, like you kind of alluded to, Beyond Meat would be, as it were, like the Kleenex brand, right?
Exactly.
It's like tissue, whatever, you just
Yeah.
say Kleenex, whether or not you buy that brand.
Yes.
That's holistically, what you're asking for. So the Beyond, do you feel that that is better for your brand, or worse, that they're kind of the Kleenex brand of the Beyond products?
Well, it's definitely a huge challenge to penetrate the market when you have a Kleenex in your market. So we arrived at the dance a little bit late, so we came in as number 2. And we've done our best by getting our brands into that slide where I showed you some of our customers. That's like our large customers, that's a contingent piece of our business relationship, is that light brand gets promoted. If you're a Blue Jays fan, you will see when you're watching the Blue Jays, you'll see the light banner in behind home plate. So we are trying really hard to move closer to first place, but it is definitely a challenge, for sure. Honestly, the Beyond brand, we try to segregate ourselves from that as well. So to chase it and be parallel with it, we're kind of trying to be the different segment as well, because they're not the same. Our product depth is a lot wider in what we offer in plant-based, and there's very distinct differences in the actual products themselves. Sure.
Thank you, Vanda. It's always enjoyed hearing you speak. You've got so much energy. But I just wanted to ask you, we talked when Corey Peters was presenting, there was a question about using climate and sustainability as a selling point. We talked about features and benefits just recently. And so has that morphed yet into when you're in front of the customer, are you talking about features and benefits and including the sustainability story in there? And I guess, just as marketers in the room, when's that going to become mainstream? Or I don't think it is yet, but
I would agree it's not mainstream yet. Because Maple Leaf operates on a shared value kind of platform, we are constantly talking about shared value to our customers. And a big piece of our shared value is our commitment to sustainability and all the wonderful things that we're doing. So for example, I had a customer lunch, and I don't even know how this came up, to be quite honest. I started talking about what we do at our Brandon plant with our humane care of animals. So just a little bit of backfill. Those of you who are like a little kind of, oh gosh, slaughtering animals, fear not. This is actually a good story. So the way we slaughter sows is they come in a group because they're more comfortable that way. I apologize, some farmers in the room who probably know this. They're more comfortable that way. We don't actually slaughter them. They go down in an elevator and they're carbon monoxide and they go to sleep. And they come back up and they go down the production line. If one of them didn't work, there's a third-party audit that gets triggered right away. So if there's something that goes wrong in that humane process, then we have steps and balances to check and see what went wrong. So I was explaining this to a customer, and she was fascinated. Actually, the whole table was fascinated. So I saw her again, like a month later, and that was the first thing she said to me. I'm so impressed with what you guys do in your animal care program. And I'm lucky, I can talk all kinds of sustainability platforms because there are several that may leave customer talking points. But it is for sure something that will come up in a customer conversation much more readily than it did even Because it's on Canadians' minds. It's become a government issue, it's become a global issue. And now everybody wants to hear that there's a company that's doing some good. That's what they want to hear. So I'm happy to tell that.
And the next question is from Corey. He is a hog and grain farmer.
Oh, awesome.
Hi, just a question about carbon credits. Wondering, I guess, I think maybe we just want some. How do you guys, is that part of the thing that you share publicly with others? And also, I'm curious who you buy them from. It's like for my farm, we actually sold carbon credits for the first time this year. But in Manitoba, there's really not a lot of companies that are the mediation between whoever wants to buy them. I know in other provinces, I think there's more. It's definitely an opportunity for growth for farmers.
Sure. Absolutely. I know
Free choice, right?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, maybe there's thoughts on that and how that's worked.
Okay, so if you go on our website, and I'll take your contact even and send it to you, the nuances of sustainability. I don't work in sustainability, so it's kind of hard, but I can find the answer for that. I know here in Manitoba, the carbon credit revolves around the wind farms. That's a huge component of our carbon credit that offsets, as you know, all of the hog methane gas and all of that comes out of hog farming. So the two together are a nice parallel, and it's one of the steps we take to carbon control. But let's see if I can find you a more specific answer. And I'd be happy to help with that. That'd be something that Agri-Farms Division would probably have more insight into. I've been in the barn, but that's kind of where it ends. And it was awesome, but.
I just had a question. You said in 2016 you started with them and there was no plant-based suggestion at that time. In 2016, how far along or how much of a part of the brand was the sustainability plan and commitments? Like I said, at the beginning, or you kind of halfway into it started talking about it? Where was that in the scene?
So in 2016, they were halfway in, but the big focus was raised without antibiotics as part of our sustainability platform. So we had launched several raised without antibiotics products. We were halfway in to converting our barns into open pit style housing. So that was like the flavor of 2016 when it came to sustainability. The plant-based came a little bit later. I'd say that was probably a couple years after 2018-ish, maybe 2017-ish even. But in 2016, that was our primary sales focus. So I can only speak for the sales people, right, not other echelons of Maple Leaf. But as a sales priority, it was around, the story was around raised without antibiotics.
That's helpful. My specific question is, did you see, and if you haven't had a chance, go take a look at the website on sustainability, because it does, like everything that you go read on best practices, it sounds like a big patronizing to someone here, but it's not. Everything you read in best practices is actually there, and it's been there for 5 years. It's astonishing. And it's right here in Manitoba. So my question was, so since you were around, since they were revealing their sustainability platform, position, measurement, commitments, and progress, did that have a lift on the people that you work with? Did you get a sense to that? Did that bring some good feelings to your staff? Or do you think it positively affected retention, for instance?
Absolutely, for sure. The RWA story is very local because our barns are here, and we walked, our sales team before the pandemic was able to walk through an RWA open style housing barn. And it's very uplifting to be able to walk amongst sounds of the animals, and they're not graded, to watch them being born in a free pen and watch the babies go and see their mom when they're first born. It's fascinating. So yes, absolutely, it's a huge lift. It's part of our shared value proposition in that you can feel proud about the things that Maple Leaf does. And the RWA sustainability piece that I first started with, absolutely, there's definitely that. Now our carbon neutral announcement of 2017, that was again another layer of recognizing that Maple Leaf globally is a leader in this piece of what's dramatically changing our landscape.
And that's just really helpful to hear it out loud, because you hope so, you presume that it would cause a lift and cause people that work for you and with you to feel better. but it's also a business case argument. Because it's in the world of retention right now, which is a massive part of any business, or attracting the best talent, and having a purpose, as much as I was talking about beyond having a purpose, you actually showed up with some super legit purpose and mission early on and delivered.
Yes, it's really Michael McCain's legacy, to be quite honest. That was first and foremost for him to move the company in this direction, and he's done a remarkable job of doing that. That tour, the barn tours, we still talk about them. They're 2016, and you're like, remember when we were on the barn tour? So we still talk about it as a group because it was that uplifting.
All right, well, let's get